Welcome and thank you all for joining today's panel discussion on inside criminal justice. My name is Shauna K. Salmon and I'm the Creative Associate at the IIP. To stay up to date on all of our upcoming panels and events, please follow our socials at IIP_John Jay. It is now my privilege to introduce our panelists and moderator for this afternoon's discussion. For time's sake, I'm going to keep the bios very short, and I will put a link to each panelist and moderator's full bios in the chat. I encourage you to check them out. We are lucky to have this group of experts and who are being so generous with their time. So first, I'm happy to introduce our moderator, Luis Morales, who serves as the Executive Director of the Manhattan DA Academy at the Manhattan District Attorney's Office and runs ICJ in that office. Next is Gabriel Hippolyte, who is a former inside criminal justice student and an assistant district attorney in the Major Economic Crimes Bureau at the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. We then have Professor Geraldine Downey, who is a co-creator of the Inside Criminal Justice Program, a professor of psychology, and the director of the Columbia University Center for Justice. And finally, we are joined by Denise Roman, a former student of the Inside Criminal Justice Program and a full-time student at Bard College. Now it is my pleasure to turn it over to today's moderator, Luis Morales.
Thank you so much for that introduction, and it's great to be reunited with the Edgecombe class of 2019. And we have a lot to cover with this great group, so let's get straight to the questioning. I want to begin with Professor Downey and ask if you can explain in broad strokes what the Inside Criminal Justice Program is and how it came to be, how it made it into the Manhattan DA's office and Queensborough Correctional.
So I'm delighted to be here and welcome everybody, past and present students. So how it came to be about was Lucy Lang, who was then in Luis's position, read an article in Columbia Magazine, as she's a graduate of Columbia, that talked about the college programs that Columbia offers in a variety of prisons. And Lucy said, I have this idea, which is to bring prosecutors from the Manhattan DA's office inside a correctional facility, specifically a Queensborough correctional facility, to engage in a seminar with men, and it extended then to women, coming to their end of their sentences. And together, the seminar participants would talk for throughout the seminar about the pressing issues of the day in criminal justice, and would then co-develop policy proposals. So I said, this sounds great, because I teach a class in Sing Sing, and the students who are in that class say I get them to come up with these policy proposals, and then nobody ever hears about them again. And so I know that they would think participating in something like this would be phenomenal. And I also know that our Columbia students, who many of whom go on to be lawyers, would appreciate this too, because we have a similar course here. So together, Lucy and I, and I give credit to Lucy here, put together Inside Criminal Justice. And the real purpose of it is to bring together what some of our students eloquently call both sides of the law, people who are typically adversaries, who see each other in stereotypical roles, and who've never had the opportunity to connect as individuals, as students in a class, and to bring their expertise and combine it together to change policy. So that's what the goal of the Inside Criminal Justice has been, and then to get that policy and take it into reality. So I hope I've answered that part of the question.
Thank you so much. And to build on that, we'll start with one of the typically adverse parties. We'll start with Gabby, who's an ADA in the Manhattan DA's office, and ask, as a prosecutor, why was it important to you to take this course? It's completely voluntary. It's different than the typical CLE programming you encounter. Why ICJ for you?
So, it was extremely important to me to take this course. And I guess I should really say, taking a step back, I had applied to this program multiple times because I knew that it was so unique in terms of bringing both sides to the party. But as a prosecutor and also as a minority, I think it's extremely to be an active participant in criminal justice reform. And as a prosecutor, we really hold we are the gatekeepers of justice, and being able to have that dialogue with individuals who are participating in work release is really unique. You know, typically we are only able to engage and speak to the are accused of crimes through their counsel. And so really getting to see how we're able to change the policies and work through, you know, effective change into like short-term possibilities to affect policy proposals was something that I wanted to be a part of and give that lens, you know. I come from a family, just by sideway, Luis, I come from a family where I have both sides of the law. You know, I have members of my family who have been police officers, but I also have members of my family who've been accused of crimes and have gone through the criminal justice system. So it is something that I internalize, and I wanted to be able to voice that opinion as well.
Thank you. And Denise, I posed the same question as someone who was working long days while a resident at Edgecombe, and hear about this program. I remember coming to the meeting room and sharing this idea. Why did you want to come join us and be part of the first cohort at Edgecombe?
Honestly, it was an escape for what I was going through at that time. I didn't know it would take me this far. So these programs are crucial and important because, you know, men and women, we're looking for an escape, you know, because prison is not an actual real, it's not the real world. You have to learn this world that it is, and learn how to adapt and to survive. So when we go through oppression with police officers, with correctional officers at the facility, we look for, you know, ways to escape, whether it's reading books or going to school or doing some type of program that is useful to us, not because of our crime or the charge, or if I sold drugs, I don't need a program. It's obviously I don't use drugs, but maybe I need something more that will help sustain, you know, employment, you know, housing. So when I came to this program, I was like, listen, I need to get away from these people. I need to do something intellectual, stimulate my mind, because this is where I want to go. I want to be heard, but I also want to listen and learn, because I cannot grasp exactly what is happening behind these bars. You understand? From the courtroom to the bars, it needs to be changed. And a lot of people don't see the light because of the oppression we're going through, because of what we feel in the courtroom. So they're not interested. They don't trust us. They don't trust you. So we want to take that away, that distrust, and build the trust. So when I sat with everyone in the classroom and I heard, you know, like Gabby's story, then it brought me to say, okay, you know, well, let's be honest here and see what we can do to change it, even on my behalf.
So trust is a really important part of
Absolutely.
this.
Trust is everything with just like your personal relationship or your friendship, or with a spouse, or with a colleague. Trust is everything, even with a complete stranger. When I walk by the subway, do I have to trust this person not to hurt me or to give me the right directions? Trust is everywhere. We just don't realize that.
So, and this is both Denise and Gabby, when you started this course and you're sitting down at the table for the first time, and then as the class goes on, can you talk a little bit about that process of both building that trust and what it's like to start the course, and how those relationships progress from that first day, awkward first day, to the policy proposals at the conclusion of the course?
Go ahead, Gabby.
So, you know, what Luis isn't saying is that it's a really rewarding, inspiring moment, but it's also very intense. It's a 4-month program where we're meeting every Tuesday from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. Everyone's doing this outside of their normal activities, so you have to opt in. And how it is building that trust, as Denise said. You know, the first time that we go into the classroom, you have a bunch of attorneys who are seated down, and then you have all of these incarcerated individuals who are coming in. And it's a realization that we're about to have a real conversation, and it's letting down those guards and really discussing, what were the reasons why I became a prosecutor? Or, you know, coming from, and I'm not going to speak for Denise because I think she could say this eloquently, you know, like, what were the reasons that she is where she is at that current point, and how do we help Denise to get back into a position where nothing could occur again? You know, that's something that I think that was really important for us. And what was eye-opening for a lot of prosecutors, I believe, is that, you know, we only see something up to a certain point. We're dealing with individuals who are accused up until the point that they're sentenced. And we're not focusing enough in terms of what are the barriers that are in place that prohibit individuals to reintegrate into society. If we really want to tackle recidivism and really make change, we have to see and look at it like these are individuals who are going through a situation, and we have a duty in terms of our community to work with individuals and try to figure out what's the best solution. And during that time frame that we're there for the 4-month period, we're learning, you know, we're on that dance floor, we're going in and out of our comfort zone and tackling these issues, and ultimately coming down that we're all involved in this community and we all really play a part in each other's success and failures.
And
Thank
Denise,
you, Gabby.
go for it.
So it was very intense. I was excited, but I was also very, I felt scared to be open and honest, only because of my environment, only because I feel like I will be penalized if I say too much, if I reveal what is happening here. And I still do, absolutely. So I was excited. I felt scared. It was very intense because we don't know how people are gonna act. You know, I can't, you know, hold high expectations for another criminal there with me or my fellow inmate. You know, I don't know if they're gonna, you know, ruin this program for me, but I want to be heard. So I kind of like felt like I needed to prep talk with everyone first. Like, listen, you know, we have to be careful what we say here because of the correctional officers. For, you know, in fear of retaliation, we do not want to offend any of the prosecutors here, and you know, because it's not you guys' fault at all. But we needed to build that trust, and it was like a give and take. Like you give and I give a little more until we felt so comfortable to say, you know what? Yeah, I did do something wrong and I see that, but I need you to see why. And I need you to see that not everyone is going to lie to you. Not everyone is here to play the system, but I need you to see that if I don't have family behind me, people say, oh, when you go to court, it looks so good. So what happens to the people that don't have nobody? That don't have nobody to show up in the courtroom? That's me. And I'm the one who's trying to survive. This is what I wanted to bring light when I went to the class, because, you know, it's like this myth, and I see it happening when people come and support it. Oh, they got a support system, let them out. If they had a support system, they shouldn't be doing the things that they're doing. Maybe they don't have the proper support system. Maybe their support system needs support too. But for those who come in and they don't have no support, no one there to show up in the court. If I was a DA, I would really take that into consideration. Like, this person has no one. I'm really, all they have left, their freedom is in my hands. Yes, they committed crime. And depending on the crime, of course, I'm not going to let someone go random free in the world that's going to hurt people. You understand? But I also want to, you know, you want to give some type of equality. You want to be fair in a way and say, listen, yeah, you might go away for a couple of months, a year, whatever it is, depending on the crime. But this is what we have. And this is, you know, speak to us and say, listen, I'm not here to lie to you. I'm not here to, you know, to make more money or whatever. It's like, this is a program that we actually trying to put in to the system, because as we can see many years later, as we all know this this history through our education, this is a built design system. So if you ask me, in my opinion, I don't see why we have to, like, why we, the people and everyone, we have to go, you know, beyond and in depth of trying to figure out a way to stop recidivism and mass incarceration when we know the core problem. Okay, so I believe that, you know, taking this class, you know, did shed some light, and it's changed my life forever, because here I am still engaged. Who would knew? You understand? The other girls see that and like, wow, like this is actually real. This is actually working, but you have to believe it. You have to stick through it. And it goes on both ends.
Thank
You
for
guys
that.
adore me. Thank you.
So this is actually a perfect segue to Professor Downey in asking about the benefits of both inside criminal justice programming, but other higher education programs inside prisons and jails, and where both of those fit into that process.
So my job, my day job, is educating basically 18 to 24-year-olds. And we bring in students to Columbia and all the other universities and college and invest heavily in them, in the belief that they are the future of the world, that they can grow and develop. And so that's kind of what a job of an educator is. And they have to start with this belief that people grow, develop, and change. Otherwise, we should be out of a job. Incarceration and prisons are the opposite. They're places that are for the incapacitation of people deemed or viewed as dangerous by society. And they're not designed with the view to supporting the growth and development of people inside. Yet, there are people inside who have transformed themselves and transformed the outside world and shown that they can grow and develop. So the importance of programs like this are twofold, and education in general. One is for the people who are incarcerated and who are told by prosecutors, by judges, that their lives don't matter, and that and the kind of things that get said to them really fix them in the place of the crime that they have been convicted of committing. So education gives hope, education gives the possibility of transformation and of a future, not just to the incarcerated people, but to their families and to their communities. And so bringing education into prison does that. But the other part that it does is for any of us who go in and interact with people like Denise, you realize that that's where policy should come from. People who are proximate to the problem know what the problem is and know what the solutions should be. So as this is a collaboration, this class inside criminal justice, a collaboration with people bringing different strengths and trying to solve problems together. So in my view, it's exactly how societies should operate, and it should have all stakeholders involved and collaborating in community to make change. So education in prison and outside is sort of fundamental to the success of society. Incarceration should be done away with, and I'll leave it at that.
So I'm going to then ask Denise, from your perspective, how important to you were the educational opportunities that were available to you? And impact, you've spoken a little bit to this, but if you want to speak a little more to what the impact those programs, both inside criminal justice and other programs you encountered, had as you were returning home and re-entering your community.
Wow. My third time in prison, I said, okay, these quick little side hustles, it ain't working. And it's making me look like a bad guy. And I'm just trying to make it. And I know it ain't right. But I remember before committing this crime, and talking to myself in financial needs, and I can't wait. That's my fault for being impatient, and not having the real proper support system, because when you're on your own, things kind of like weigh on your shoulders, and when that happens, you become impulsive and you make bad decisions. So here I am working full-time as a dishwasher, graveyard shift, 6 to 9 a.m. and then I'm going to school right after that. I took my GED at Lehman College. I failed math, but I gave up there because, of the housing situation. And I needed to be more serene with myself, and my environment wasn't. So when I started to commit this crime and sell drugs, I got locked up, of course, very quickly. And I started to realize and sit back and watch my surroundings and say, this isn't my life. This is not what I thought about as a child growing up. This is not this is not how I see my future at all. These people, a lot of people I see I cannot connect with mentally or intellectually because they're a little behind in any type of conversation. It just didn't fit. So I said, I need to do something. I need to change. I need to get more educated so that way I can speak up and speak to others. And people will say, well, who are you? Okay, I'm Denise Roman. I work for whatever. This is what I do in life. And I know that education was going to make the change in that. Soon as I got to Takana Correctional Facility, I applied for my GED. I passed beyond the scores they asked for. And within a month, I applied for BARD, which is BPI, which I'm wearing right now. I just got in the mail today. And I got in. So it was a written essay. And mind you, I have no college experience, but it was just a question to think outside the box. And I wrote like 10 pages and they adored that. I got into school and people started to recognize that was so important, not just for me, but it made me feel good and wanted to keep going because of what it did for other women that I did not even speak to. And I made that very clear too, but they came back up to me and said, you know, you are inspiring. People thought I went home. They never saw me. I was always at school studying, because this is what, when these programs are in there, they're there. But a lot of people get sidetracked because you do have, you know, the influencers who are negative, just like we have them in the street, okay? And they set these false social norms, and then they create this new jail prison life. I didn't want to be a part of that, okay, at all. So when I started to go to school, women started to see that and respect that hustle and said, okay, I want to be like her. I want to do better. I want to get these grants and go places and speak to people and do things and have my voice to be heard. So I think that it's very important for college, for schools to be in education, to be in prison, because not only that it would change someone else's life right there, but just that one person can change the perspective of hundreds of inmates around. Whether you go into court, you know, people see this and they get inspired and think, there is a way, there is a light at the end of that tunnel. Let me try to go ahead. But without these programs, it's no way for me to put a hand on the door and open that door or put my foot in that door if there's no door to put my foot in. So, yeah, I will talk forever.
Well, no, and thank you for really putting a personal narrative to the impact of these sorts of programs. And that is a great transition moment to speak to Professor Downey. Both of you have spoken to the power of these programs, but taking inside criminal justice in particular, what were some of the challenges that you and Lucy faced in trying to launch a program like this? And how did you overcome them? How did you get from the seed idea to this program that's having such a fantastic impact?
I mean, I think that I would say, relative to other programs, we faced very, very little challenges in getting this started, mainly because Lucy did a lot of the work, and because I had taught for a long time in prisons, including in Taconic. But the challenge, I would sort of say, in making this possible in other areas or jurisdictions, is that most prisons are far away from the cities that provide people to be incarcerated. And so to do this program anywhere outside of the city where the prosecutors are would make it very, very difficult. We've thought about bringing it to Sing Sing, but to get there from the city is difficult. And that's one challenge. I think, you know, some of the other challenges are the challenges of teaching in prison in general. You go in, you don't know how quickly you're going to get into the room, or everybody's going to get into the room. But I would say that at Queensborough, there was a lot of institutional support. Superintendent Breslow and his staff were phenomenal. And so they made it possible. And once we'd done it once, nothing fell apart, and we could do it again. The other issue was, persuading the the incarcerated students that this was going to be okay. And Denise talked a little bit about this, about, you know, that, I mean, they were less polite in Queensborough, saying, why would we go into a room with prosecutors? Again, and, you know, I was treated unfairly and here's the circumstances. So we have to kind of get beyond that. But generally, once we had students who'd been in the course, either, especially Jarrell Daniels, he came back and helped us recruit each semester, and we always brought somebody back who had been an incarcerated student and who was now sort of working with us to persuade people. Sometimes then not in the DA's office in Manhattan, because they knew the program was okay, but other DA's offices are sometimes concerned about going in, having prosecutors going in to meet with people that not that they have put in prison, but that their offices have, and that kind of concern needs to be addressed, you know. And basically we say these are people coming to the end of their sentences. They're really not thinking about you. They're thinking about the next phase of their life. But there was one thing that I sort of wanted to say that I kind of would say is our biggest challenge, and that's, you know, everybody in our program inside criminal justice comes home, and the closing ceremony is after people have made the transition home. And I think all of us have learned really what it takes to make that transition and to make it successfully. And I don't believe that we've put enough support in to help our students in the same way as Columbia helps our graduates to kind of get on to the next phase of their life. And, you know, you come across these kind of confluence of bureaucracies that, especially in systems that are intended to make the transition easier, that you just throw up your hands and say, like, what's going on here? So one example is, you know, when people come home from prison, they come home with an ID that says just released from prison, which is not really, you know, what you want to be showing out on the street or as you're looking for jobs. But the main problem, and I think Denise touched on this a little bit, is with housing. And so many people come home to shelters, and as we've been kind of working over this weekend with a current student who came home, came to us to be part of our Justice in Education program, like almost the next day, who got himself a job, who stayed in the shelter, and who has now got himself accommodation, like a long-term sustainable accommodation. Yet he had to be 90 days in a shelter. And as he wanted to move out of the shelter, he hadn't got the voucher, which would pay for his accommodation. It costs the city $150 a night to keep somebody in a shelter. And people stay in shelters almost over a year and almost a year and a half on average. The accommodation that he was going to move into, the cost of staying an extra month in the shelter would cover 5 months in that accommodation. Yet he's been required to stay in the shelter system for another month in order to get the voucher. So I went through this because it really annoyed me, but it just shows the way in which systems intended to support the transition just are not working because of bureaucratic issues. And I think that that's what, you know, it makes us who want to support the transition, the successful transition of our students, like just kind of throw up our hands in despair. And these are the kind of things that are sort of small policies that can be changed. And some of the policies we would never know about these problems if we weren't teaching a class like Inside Criminal Justice. So that's the biggest challenge, is how can we support our students as they return home, I would say, rather than setting up the program itself inside. So you've heard my whine of the day.
Absolutely. I think, you know, we want you to make sure that we are continuing to provide that support and help how we can. And that the interagency challenge is just one of the many. To turn quickly back to Gabby, in your view, what is the overall benefit to a prosecutor's office from a program like Inside Criminal Justice, both on a personal level, but also on, as you've seen, at an institutional level, having been a graduate for some time now.
Yeah. So I think it really touches upon a lot of the aspects that Geraldine and Denise spoke about earlier, on an institutional and the macro level. Everyone looks at prosecutors and individuals who are accused as adversarial, not really understanding in terms of the perspective that we take as prosecutors, that we really represent the people of the state of New York. And that's inclusive of those individuals who are accused. That is inclusive of the victim and in terms of the surrounding community. And I think it's really important, at Manhattan, we're really unique. We have a lot of community partnerships. We go out into the community and we give speeches prior to high school students in terms of what are the effects of criminal justice, but there isn't a focus point in terms of what happens with individuals who are accused of the crimes and how are they going to rehabilitate. And as Geraldine said, there are a lot of hurdles for successful reintegration. And as a stakeholder in terms of criminal justice and the narrative in terms of public safety, I think it's really incumbent upon us to look at it. Okay, what are ways to fix those hurdles? Geraldine discussed IDs, for example, and the stakeholder, one of the aspects that I did worked on personally was really looking at identifications for participants in criminal justice, right? In the work release program at Edgecombe, and looking at how these identifications that they're given to participants used to say inmate across the board, right? And you'd hear these narratives and these anecdotal stories from the participants in the class about how difficult it was for them to go see their children at school, right? If there's a PTA meeting, how they can't even get past security because they're only carrying an identification card that says inmate on it. And as a prosecutor, you don't realize sometimes the effect of your sentencing, even though we take a lot of time in terms of discretion, looking at the mitigating factors, there are other hurdles that are just not there. And I think that's important for every prosecutor to go through a program such as this, to really understand, we are always dealing with human beings. And also it's important, I think, for the participants to be able to have a true conversation with the individuals or the institutions that have affected them and also had to hold them accountable for the actions that were taken. It's part of that rehabilitation. I find it very similar to the goal of restorative justice, and by having all of these actors at the same table, it's the only way to improve. And if we really want to make an impact in terms of our society, New York City specifically, and I'm from New York, I think that's a dialogue that we need to have, and we need to have all stakeholders there.
So to piggyback on that question, we've seen how the impact that this program can have in the DA's office and hopefully in other DA's offices that will attempt to emulate the model using some of the replication materials that are out there and us as resources. Denise, what other criminal justice agencies do you think could benefit from programs like Inside Criminal Justice, and what could you see those benefits being?
What other agencies? I agree with Gabby with the ID. I remember going into elementary school to take Microsoft Excel for a job. He said, once I learned the spreadsheet, I'm hired. I was like, okay, cool. But I can't get into school because I don't have IT. And everyone's looking at me holding on to their kids. And I'm like, oh no, this is embarrassing. But I believe that, like when Gabby said, going out and speaking out, going into the public, to the community and speaking, especially to, the young kids, because that's where it's going to stem from. I think that is a great step because, we're actually going out doing the field work. And like we mentioned before, even having someone like me, come down to these meetings to be able to diffuse any tension, because we don't want that. This is not about retaliation or getting over on a system or, being bought. Because at the end of the day, like I tell, these people, my peers, from my community, the judge, these DAs, they're smart. Okay. They know when someone's lying. They've been doing this for a long time. you can't play the system, okay? But we're not here for that. We're not here to abuse them, and they're not here to abuse us. We're trying to find a common ground where we can reduce this recidivism, okay? So someone like me, see, they're not gonna trust a DA. They're not gonna trust a DA if they come with a handbook. They don't care what you come with. You can come with all the great things. Some people will. Some people will. Some people who know the difference, but those who don't, and they just want to stay on the street, then you need a mediator. You need someone who is from that community to get through them and say, listen, like, okay, this is where it stops. And this is how it's going to begin from here. This is what we need to do. This is not about a tit for tat, you know, I'm going to get over on the system or I want to retaliate. This is about trying to make a change within yourself, but most importantly for the community. So I believe that, you know, these programs should be in every prison. You know, because a lot of guys, I get people inboxing me in Instagram about BPI and John Jay when I post you guys. And I'm like, they're like, well, what prison that's in? And my brother's over here. And I want to help, but yet we're not extended that far yet. You know, so I believe too, we need to be going into the courtrooms. We need to have some type of panel. We need something, because we need to have these meetings to speak to you know, those who are committing these crimes, so that way it can get through to them. Listen, this is a shot, a big shot, and it will change your whole life, and it will make everyone happy, because at the end of the day, we still need law. This is how we keep order. Okay, we still need protection. As a woman, I fear walking in New York City streets because I don't know what's going to happen. And then not only that, even though I just got 2-year early release from parole,
Well done, well done.
thank you. I couldn't believe it, but God is good. You understand? And when you start to put out that change, you know, when you start to manifest this change and want something better for yourself, I believe it will come. It will come because you're going to start attracting the right people. You understand? And when these opportunities come, I don't want you to dismiss it because of anger or hatred or because of distrust. Okay? You know, everyone needs to you know, work and we need to move with love with everything we do. Even if I hold the door for a stranger, that's a kindness out of love. I'm not getting anything from that. So, you know, once people see that, and they start to break that wall down, because remember, we have a hard wall. A lot of us know that, you know, we're being oppressed and, you know, we never was afforded education and blah, 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 X, Y, and Z. But now how can we stop that? Since we know that, we know that's the problem. Now, what we're going to do about it? And not just only the DA, you know, it's not about a slap on the wrist. It's also about the person committing the crimes. You have to want to see this bigger picture. You have to understand it. And if you really want to come out of it and you don't have to live this life, then you need to just listen, work with us. We have the programs, we have everything that you need to get out of it. So that way, when you come back to the community, you are fully rehabilitated, and we're going to be working with you from there. So you don't go backwards and we don't have to see you again in court. You understand? So I think we need to spread out more and as soon as possible, because, you know, I see a lot of kids making these drill songs and they're going to jail, thinking it's cute, and they're young. They're like 20. My daughter's 21. She's a double major in Ohio. Okay. And I'm so happy for that because I spent 10 years of my life in prison. I wasn't there. You understand? But now I talk to all the girls in the dorms, FaceTime in her college. So, you know, I take this with me everywhere I go. Even though, you know, I'm not with you guys every day, we don't have things set up where I can go and speak to people in person, but I still do my part because it's made a change with me and I'm a believer. So I know it can make a change with somebody else.
So you, Denise, I'm just gonna follow up with a quick question and open it also to Professor Johnny and Gabby. We talked about expanding the picture, expanding the people at the table. Who do you think would be the most important group to get to the table, to the inside criminal justice table next, be it defense attorneys, judges, corrections? Who if you could pick, what agency do you think could have the most impact by getting involved in programming like this? And I'll let each of you guys answer that.
Go ahead, Gabby.
So, you know, if we're going to say criminal justice agencies, I think that, you know, it would be important, or it is important to have all the stakeholders at the table. So I think you would have to have people from corrections, you would have to have individuals who are working within the police department as well. But outside of, and obviously you would want to have judges and court officers, but outside of criminal justice agencies, I also think that this is a great opportunity if victims are able to opt into it, right? I've read the notion of restorative justice, and this program is built for opting in. We have our participants, the students in the class, they have opted into it. So they wanted to go through this experience, and similar with ADAs. I think that the narrative needs to be heard from our victims of crimes as well. And if they are there and ready to have that type of dialogue. Granted, I know it's complex, but I think once you have all the stakeholders, as Geraldine so eloquently stated, then you can really affect policy and decide what are the best ways or what should we be advocating for to really improve the criminal justice system.
So we have another program at the Center for Justice that Jarrell Daniels, who was in the first Inside Criminal Justice, founded when he came home and started to work with us at the Center for Justice. And it brings together young New Yorkers before they get heavily involved in the system, and leaders from all of the sort of city agencies, and to kind of think about how to prevent problems from happening before they occur. Because Jarrell realized, and I think anybody who's been in the Inside Criminal Justice, that it's not just the law enforcement or legal system agencies that bear responsibility for criminal justice. It's DOE, ACS, HRA, it's all the city agencies that are supposed to be safety net agencies, and as well as engaged with public safety. And so, having everybody come in and sort of listen to the stories of people who are incarcerated, because they didn't begin with their crime. They began with them very often being the victims of systems that are intended to support vulnerable families. And so what we find in justice ambassadors, and a lot of the graduates of Inside Criminal Justice have then joined justice ambassadors, is that sense of restorative justice that keeps coming up, that it's the prosecutors or the city agency leaders, hear about the way in which they did their job as they were told to do it, or in their role, actually caused harm. And they and sort of find a way to hold themselves and their agencies accountable for the harms done, and not just focus on people who are incarcerated, who at the end of a sort of a journey of chaos and turmoil have ended up within the criminal justice system. But the incarcerated students also sort of, because they're thinking of themselves as agents of social change, collaborating with other agents of social change, that they can then better take responsibility for the ways in which they've harmed their communities. So it is, in essence, one of the Inside Criminal Justice and Justice Ambassadors, one of the most remarkable forms of restorative justice that I've seen. And it wasn't intended as a restorative justice program, but that's what in fact it does. And I think that Gabby and Louise, you'd agree as well, and Denise, that we all feel better and healed and ready to contribute, having been part of this program.
I'm glad that this question was brought up. I feel like I'm more of an internal and you guys are external. So really quick, now everyone needs to be on this boat. No one can be left out, because that's the problem. When people are left out, then what happens? I feel like you guys don't trust me. You don't want me here. So everyone must be, especially, between the judge, the DA, and the defender. I'm saying that correctly?
Parole.
So we need that Roman scale. We need that balance, right? We need that balance. But also, not just in that courtroom. See, we can have that balance in that courtroom and everything can go great. Okay, I committed this crime. I apologize. I accept my time. It's reasonable. I have everything set up. I'm going to get an education. I'm looking for a brighter future. But what happens when I leave that courtroom? Everyone has to be on the same ship. Like you said, Gabby, I believe Gabby said, just like the correctional officers and the courtroom officers, they play a huge part that people don't even, it's beyond, comprehensible, because it's like they can destroy your life in there. And I was a victim of that. And this is how I know as a woman. And I know it happened with men, but for a woman, you understand? And here I am, everything's going great for myself. I'm at Edgecombe. I'm about to be released. I just came into Inside Criminal Justice with John Jay. I just met Ann Jacob. She came up to me, asked me to come to her class. Like, life is great. Like, okay, I'm about to really do this. But what happens when we have correctional officers who are not on board, who don't care to be on board? You understand? And I feel like I witnessed and I believe and I know that a lot of these people, especially with courtroom officers and booking officers, correctional officers, they need to be evaluated. The same way how inmates get mentally a mental health evaluation, they need to be evaluated because these people come in with their own issues. You understand? Not knowing that this job was going to be the way how it is, and they thought it was going to be a different way. So now that anger sits in them, and they want to treat us like we're less than an animal. They want to treat us like we're garbage. If I'm in school and I'm going to Columbia or Bard, and I'm doing this every day, I'm about to go home, I'm about to have a brighter future. Guess what? That one officer can destroy my whole life. Okay, and this happened right after you guys with Edgecombe. This is a prime example. My phone, while I'm in the hospital fighting for allergic reaction on a medication they prescribed to me, okay, I'm in the hospital fighting for my life, but yet my cell phone that gets held in the locker downstairs get planted in my property. That's a new charge. That's a breach of security. That's 5 to 8 years. Something that I have no control over. No control over. Don't know what is going on. And they see that we getting this help. Okay, and there's a lot of people who don't want to see other women rise up or other men rise up, because at the end of the day, even though they wear blue and they work behind the bars and for the government, they're people too. They're people who envy. You understand? They thought this job was going to be one way when it's this way, and now they're angry with that. So we have to be careful with that, because the inmate could be walking a straight line and could come across that one officer. You understand, who don't care about her life or his future. You know how many times I feared the officer was going to let girls attack me and turn the other way? I had to live with that every day, not knowing what it was going to be like for me. But knowing that this is my future, this is where I want to go. The prison is not where I want to be. So when I started to make that change and get myself educated and get involved with Inside Criminal Justice with you guys, people try to take that away from you while you're in prison. It could be other inmates. It could be correctional officers. So it do need to be a platform where everyone has to be on board, and a lot of people should be evaluated, not just only inmates, officers. And we should do this on, every 6 months. So that way a doctor determine, is this person mentally stable? Because guess what? That one person can destroy another person's future, and I really wanted to bring that up, the experience from inside, so you guys can see how important it is. Everyone needs to be on board, and it needs to be a certain protocol. Everyone needs to know about these handbooks and programs and offer them and speak about it. Because when you continually to speak about something, it resonates into a person's mind. That's all they think about. But if you're talking to negativity, of course, that's one thing that's going to happen. So we know these things. Now, everyone needs to be on board. I really believe that, especially with the correctional officers, it's extremely dangerous. It's extremely scary. And some people fear that if I join this program, I'm going to get looked at as an op, as an enemy. So then how do I carry myself in prison with other inmates who don't want to do this program, or with correctional officers who dislike me and they team up? So it's still dangerous. And some people don't want to do the program because it's fear. Just like the DA will have some sort of fear of, I don't want anyone to try to retaliate for something someone else did. The same thing with the inmate. It's just a different way. And we fear the correctional system, the correctional officers. What comes after that if I do speak up? What comes if I do start to do something for myself? They feel like they just a CEO and they're stuck in there like an in-house slave. This is how they view themselves. So when you have a group of people that you're working with, we trying to get them out and trying to, build these programs and make them better people for the community so our community can be strong together. We got to remember the people that's behind the bars, that's watching the inmates as well. Their mental state of mind, their education, what they bring from the street, because they do. They bring the negativity from the street. So it's not just all about the inmate. We got to remember, everyone got to be on board, on the same page, even if it is a demand, a must, mandatory. Okay. And yeah, everyone needs to be on board and they need to be evaluated as well.
So I think, all three of you have made really, really strong points about the need to expand the program, that we need to have everyone on board because it's trite. We're not just working in isolation. We're working across a number of agencies and across a number of different careers and career paths and lived experiences. Before I get to because I do see some questions are coming in and we'd like to get those. I just wanted to pose one final question to Gabby and Denise that goes a little bit about that lived experience and your own personal experience after taking the course. And start with Gabby. How has your handling of cases changed as a result of taking the course? And for Denise, what are some of the assumptions about the criminal justice system and those who are involved in it that changed as a result of your conversation, the conversations that you had in the course of taking Inside Criminal Justice? And then we will get a couple of those Q&As and feel free to add if you have anything.
It's definitely added to my decision-making process in terms of really looking at the effects of sentences, right? And, at Manhattan, we have an emphasis in terms of what are ways to really tackle public safety and how are we going to make Manhattan a better place to live? It's from our alternatives to incarceration, it's to the way that we prosecute cases, it's the amount of training that we have, the hiring in terms of discretion that we look at our assistants. And so this really aided me in terms of just always humanizing the experience, right? It goes to what Denise stated. I deal with, I'm a felony assistant. All of the cases that I have, majority of the cases I have, are always going to see some form of state time. And really thinking about, okay, what is the program that, some of the people who are being accused and convicted of these crimes able to get into? It played into even very aptly into one of my recent cases where a defense counsel raised to me saying like, look, one of my clients would like to have an opportunity to be able to take a program. And we had to look at the program, very critically to see, is this a program that fits what is going on with the crime that we have? And is this a program that's really going to assist that individual to reintegrate back into society? And so those are all of the factors that I was able to take for this course to start applying into my cases. Mitigating circumstances has always been stressed. But I think that it is something that should always be done to remind us of why we took this job as prosecutors and really look at the discretion that we have and the impact that we have.
Mm-hmm.
And Denise, did you want to add anything, any specific perception change that came? I mean, you shared a lot. Was there one you would like to close on?
Repeat the question.
How your mindset changed about the system, or we can go on the Q&A. I'll leave it up to you. Didn't want to cut you out of the question.
I just want to say thank you for bringing this program to Edgecombe. It definitely changed my life, made me stronger, and it made me want to help other people because I do want a better community around me for my safety and my family and friends' safety as well, for everyone's safety. But I believe, I feel like, Edgecombe was like, you out the door. That was the hardest prison I ever been to. And it's supposed to be the most easiest. This is like your last straw. You got one foot out the door. You get to spend nights home with your family. So why is it so hard? And when you guys came, see, for me, I use that as a platform to tell you guys what's happening behind here. I use you guys for everything because it's like someone's here to help me. someone is here to make something, to make a change and make better, and that's gonna listen. So, you know, when you guys came to the program, I was like, I'm signing up. I need something else to do. And you start to see people get nervous. People start to get nervous. Oh my God, they might use it as a platform to reveal and expose what's actually happening. And sometimes, you know, like I said before, with the COs, it becomes to a point that people start to get angry, and then they wanna argue and fight with the CO. They don't even think about school. So this is what I mean about this. Is why I keep going back to the correctional officer, because they play such a big, huge part on a person decision making. But I think these programs should be in, I don't want to say like in a more hardcore facility, but because mine was the easy facility and it worked out very well. But give it to those who don't have access to anything, maybe not really great colleges, or, you know, just hardcore prisons where it's the mind. We have to think about the place and then the person's mind, okay, and how we can get to that mind and help them to articulate better and to break that wall down and to believe in our system that we're trying to build, that is going to benefit them. So we need to expand that out more to them. Once we get into them and we break that down into the hardcore individuals, you know, the real strong, tough ones who don't want to break, don't want to listen to the DA, they don't want to change their life or whatever it is, because they have an influence on other people as well. So I know from experience, once I get to the man on the horse, then everyone else is going to follow. So these programs need to be more expanded, because once we get into those minds, who knows, when that mind changes for the better, now they could be an influence there when we're gone. Because what happens when, you know, we leave and they go back to their regular, you know, inmate lifestyle. But when you're carrying this type of education, this knowledge, and you're thinking about these programs and where it can get you, then you're going to move different. You're going to move different. You're going to want people around you to move different. Maybe people going to want to move with you. So these programs need to get brought out, you know, spread out, and be in places, not where it's like, oh, this is a Edgecombe, is a very low minimum, you know. No, let's not be afraid of stuff like that. We need to go into the deeps, the hardcore of it, you know. Mm-hmm.
So as an expansion is actually a great way for us to turn to one of our first Q&A questions, which comes in. And I'll start with Professor Geraldine, because it's Professor Downey, because it's a little bit more of an question about the academic professor role. And we have a question from someone at the San Francisco District Attorney's Office Restorative Justice Unit who's trying to set up a similar program. And one of the issues they're running into is that they can't find a professor willing to co-teach the course. And so in your view, how important is it that a professor teaches? How about an incarcerated person in ADA co-teaching the course? So, Professor Downey.
I think if it's an incarcerated person who has a lot of teaching experience, who's a teacher, that makes it in some ways neutral. So when I teach in Sing Sing, my co-teacher, or previous co-teacher, because he's fortunately got clemency now, was an incarcerated person who was running the program, or insider who was playing a big role in it. I don't think, I'm surprised that it's difficult to get professors to go in, because generally it's people would want to do this. So it doesn't have to be, I think with an ADA, it also would want to be somebody who's had experience teaching. And so that's kind of my sense. It's good to have a professor because they've had experience teaching, especially teaching in the prisons. But I'm happy to suggest some people in San Francisco.
Yeah, and if there are any professors in San Francisco watching this webinar, you know where to reach out. This second question has to do, and both Gabby and Denise would like your input on this. There's a question of the demographics of the prosecutors who participate and the composition of the prosecutor participants affecting the buy-in of the incarcerated students. And I mean, I can briefly answer by saying that when we put the classes together, we look for a diversity of experiences within the office and personal experiences and backgrounds. But from your experience, Gabby and Denise, what was it? How did you find the group was composed from? Because we had folks from the executive level down to second year assistants, and how did you find that group of individuals that you were in class with? And did you find that the various roles in the office were balanced in a way that brought everyone together in a meaningful way, and especially Denise in getting the buy-in of the women at Edgecombe to want to be part of the class?
Yes, thank you, Gabby. For me, wanting that change, yes. I think it was very meaningful because I felt some sort of like hope, and that's why I had the prep talk, because I didn't want no one to mess it up for me. You know, bringing in the crack. Okay, let's be honest. People do that, and you know what? I've never been a cheater. And even though I broke the law, but I still tried to, even with like when I was living the street life, I still had to live by certain rules. So I go by rules and being fair and being honest. So, you know, taking this program and coming into these classes and meeting the DAs, you know, for me, it was more of getting more clarity and an understanding. That way I can break my wall down, because I know, you know, having this anger will only stop my success and in fear. So I felt like this was my gateway to move forward in life and have, you know, you guys as my connections to these open, these doors in education, and, you know, these programs that are willing to help individuals like me. So yes, you know, I brought my honesty, and I felt like the DA was very honest and humble. Everyone was listening, and we started to like collaborate with each other and talk and laugh and like normal people. And we was just, it felt like we kind of like shook hands and said, okay, let's fix this. Yeah, you broke the law, whatever. We had to sentence you, or another agency did, or, you know, someone else did, but this is what we can do from here. Because, you know, what I took from the DA was, I'm not here to destroy your life. You know, I'm here to follow, you know, the law and the order of the law. And I was happy about that, because, you know, it made me realize that, yeah, I was wrong. And I have these amazing people that, you know, despite, you know, coming to correctional facilities and meeting with people that, you know, they could have prosecuted, you know, you guys were very brave. And I respect that a lot. And that bravery gave me some clarity and hope, because it made me feel like I can trust you guys more to speak out and be heard and be helped at the same time without any, you know, phoniness. So it was just, for me, I think it was all love, and it was genuine. And I loved it. I wish I could take the class over and over. I wish I can go back and help other women see, because I still talk about it, and women are like, I posted the chats in the panels, and I'm like, you're really doing it. I'm like, yeah, you could be doing it too. You know, so I really want to go back and help, because it really did give me a better perspective of you guys and how you guys operate the system and where you want to go with us and how you're trying to help us. So we need people to just open up their eyes and tear down that wall and accept that you broke the law, and you got to face the crime. And now let's fix that. Let's go on from there. This is where we come back in. Not just we're just going to sentence you, but we're going to come back and step in and say, okay, because you know this is your fault. You broke the law. Yes, I have to sentence you. It's my job. However, I also can help you, so we don't have to be in this courtroom again. I don't want you to feel like you're an enemy, okay? Because that's what we feel like. Even with our own lawyer, we know that you guys are colleagues. So if I don't have no family in the back and everyone is friends in this courtroom, where does that leave me? Where's the trust? You understand? So this program brings a lot of trust. And I think we should just continue. And I want to be a part of it still.
So, you know, as Luis stated, the demographic really ranged. It was very diverse, but it was also very reflective of, you know, the DA's office in terms of ethnical composition. What I thought that was really unique was how Luis stated, you had every different individual from the DA's office. You had executive assistants. So we had our chief assistant, the number 2 in the DA's office when I was in the program, was in my classroom. We had bureau chiefs, we had assistants who were line assistants similar to myself, younger assistants who were just coming out of criminal court and starting working on felonies. And at each point, I think it was really unique to have that perspective, right? For the chief assistant in terms of hearing some of the stories that were going on with the younger assistants and having that dialogue. Was extremely important, but for the participants, right? Denise and all the other individuals, I think for to have that access to see how criminal justice has evolved throughout the time is equally important. And that's something that, we haven't really spoken about. The criminal justice system that we're dealing with today is completely variant than the criminal justice system of when I at least started in the office and how we look and handle crimes. And so having that and having a diverse group of individuals really have this discussion only helps and reinforces that evolution for us to really affect the change that we want to, and have the ability to work on these policy proposals from different vantage points. So I thought it was really unique.
So, Luis, can I just, race is always an issue when you're dealing with anything in the criminal justice system. The students, the incarcerated students are predominantly Black and brown. There may be one white student in each of the classes, or at most 2. It's really important for the prosecutors to have some people of color amongst the group. I don't think it would work in the same way if it was all white prosecutors who came in. And I think it's, that is in general, the professors who go in as well to teach in the prison are predominantly white, and white women like myself. And it is an issue that kind of has to be like addressed up front. And so as one of the students in the first Inside Criminal Justice class, Nick, he kind of broke down and said, so we can't be talking pussyfooting around the criminal justice system and reform without talking about race. So I think that finding a way to have a diverse class that has some Black and brown prosecutors in it is essential for this to work. So that's kind of my take on this.
Yes, you're correct. But also, I'm going to tell you from the internal perspective, okay? Because, we speak, us inmates, we talk all the time. Sometimes, not all the time, because I wouldn't feel away if I saw all white. I wouldn't feel away. Because guess what? What's the difference if it's a different color skin? They still come from the same branch.
They do, yeah.
You understand? So some people, like me sometimes, because I think both sides, I play double advocacy. I think this positive and the negative. So I can say, okay, having a Latina here, maybe she could relate to me, but maybe she can't. Maybe she can't. And just because of this, her color, her skin, because some people see a Black DA and say, oh, he's a traitor. I'm not trusting him. He's with them. So sometimes, it can be a little confusing. Like, okay, we do need to bring different races so we can show the diversity, but also you're going to still have the inmates who's going to be a little weary, like, okay, even though you're Black or you're Hispanic, that doesn't mean I can trust you, because I can't trust my own kind in the street. So now you're working with the people that you understand. So if we talking about people who don't like a lot of white people, whatever, they're not going to feel that comfortable all the time. Sometimes, not everyone. Most people, they're not going to feel that comfortable because we're going to think, okay, you're on their side. You've been working with them, with, the white supremacists or whatever, how people want to labelize it. So yes, a lot of labelization do come in. So on one hand, you got people who will feel comfortable when they see an African-American person or a Hispanic person. And then sometimes they're not going to be down with that. They're going to say, I don't trust you. You're a traitor to me. So it's kind of like walking on eggshells in a way, but it's still essential to have, a mixed race there and not just only white, because some people are going to say, I'm not going to a room full of crackers. You understand? This is the mentality. So we're just going to be fully honest and just come out and just say it. People are not going to walk in a room full of white people. People are not going to trust everyone who is Black and Hispanic because they work for the DA, just like they don't trust the DA. So it all goes back to trust. It all goes back to trust, because if I don't trust you, it doesn't matter what color you are, what background you come from, when, where, how. I don't trust you because you're part of a system that is corrupted. But once you show that you're not trying to corrupt that system even more, but diffuse it, the recidivism and mass incarceration, then maybe I can lean in a little more, get to know you, hear what you got to say, and then we can talk business. But right now, it's still, you know, a yes and a no.
Well put, Denise.
So
I've got to tell
on
you
the-
guys what's happening in the back doors, you know, what's happening behind the bars.
So unfortunately, I hate to be the person to cut the conversation off, and I also hope that this can serve as sort of an example of the sorts of courageous conversations that are going on in the inside criminal justice classroom in all of the settings. But we are unfortunately out of time for today's session. But before we do wrap up, I did want to mention Professor Downey put in the chat Jarrell Daniels' TED Talk, which is a great resource to learn a little bit more about the experience of inside criminal justice and also his Justice Ambassadors program. You know, I'd encourage folks who are interested in this program to also look into that because he's doing absolutely incredible work. But we are unfortunately out of time, and I just want to thank the panelists so much. It's been a wonderful reunion. I'm grateful to Downey for being my instructor when I first came into Queensborough, and for everyone for just taking a chance, for Lucy Lang for getting this program together with Professor Downey. But thank you guys so much. We do have the Inside Criminal Justice graduation coming up on March 15th at John Jay. We managed a cohort in spite of all of the obstacles, and they will be sharing their policy proposals and their ideas. And we hope to circulate that link as well for those who'd like to join by live stream. But thank you again so much for being part of this conversation, to the attendees for hearing what these folks have to say today.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks, Louise and Shanika.
Yeah.